Well, this relationship actually goes back to the 1960s. None of us were alive yet. If you're thinking we're that old, we're not. But my father and today's guest's father were friends in high school, brought us together probably before either of us can remember for the first time. And it's pretty cool that we've stayed friends and stayed in touch all these years later. I'm Brandon Butler.
I'm Nathan Shags McLeod.
And I'm Eric Hoskins.
Welcome to the Drifted Outdoors podcast. Eric, what's up, buddy? Feel like it's been forever.
I feel like it's been forever too. I mean, I know we chat back and forth on text, but actually seeing you guys, it's good seeing you guys.
Yeah.
All you had to do was send us a picture of your new boat, and everybody wants to be your best friend again. You're on the podcast on the first night. Like, it's just, it's like throwing up a few smoke signals for me and Shags.
That's right. I mean, I know I'm going to see you guys anyways later on this year, but I mean, this works out pretty good.
Oh, for the big nuptials? Is that what you're talking about?
That is correct.
Yeah, the OG Deer Camp getting back together for a weekend of fun at Big Rock Candy Mountain.
Oh man, Lauren as my +1 is in trouble, Shags, unless you can help me kind of back my foot out of my mouth a little bit here. But I mentioned something to Jesse Dubell about the wedding, and maybe I had thought Jesse was invited. Turns out he was not.
No.
And maybe we can squeeze him in, because now I feel like a total asshole. Because I'm like, dude, when you come to the wedding, we're going to float, and then you come back up to North Missouri and we're going to deer hunt and all that. So maybe he can be a hanger outer, like come and not maybe sit in on the dinner or whatever. But he can be in like the B flight of the wedding crew, like fishing while the service is going on.
All the invites went out this week, like all of them. And we were looking and we were like, all right, we're thinking about having 300. And I believe at last count, we were well above like 350. We were floating around 380 people invited. And I know not everyone's going to show up, but
right.
My God, what's one more? Who cares?
So listen, Jesse, if you're listening, just put a wig on, put a wig on, maybe a mustache. We'll slip you in through the woods, and Shags will never know that you're there.
Yeah, there'll be so many people. It's going to be a whirlwind anyways, so who cares? He can come. Let's go.
And speaking of weddings, a huge honor was bestowed upon me yesterday when I talked to our good friend Pablo Don, who asked me to stand up at his wedding. So what an honor there. So
that's great.
All right. As part of the wedding party, or are you going to be the officiant?
No, part of the wedding party.
So right on.
He's beating you to the punch. August 16th is Paddle Don's. So
that's quick.
That's my mother's birthday. That's the day Elvis died. And now it's the day Paddle Don's getting married.
I'm checking my phone. I haven't gotten an invite for that wedding yet.
Well, you're not in the wedding party, man. So
what's going on here? We may, Jesse, if you're listening, there may be room for you, because if Paddle Don doesn't invite me, he might get axed out of ours really quick.
All these dudes getting married, Eric.
Yeah. Feel like I've been in this relationship for 40 years. So
old news for you, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So are you an empty nester at this point? I'm trying to figure out how you have a bass boat now and all these.
Oh yeah. We've been empty nesters for minimum 4 years. Like, my youngest daughter is a senior in college. My oldest daughter, she's
so you're technically not an empty nester. You've got a kid that's reliant on you still. She's in college, but she's almost out.
But she doesn't, like, the only thing that she relies on with me is insurance for her health insurance. Yeah, she's got a boyfriend. They live together and they do their thing, and
pays her own college.
Yes, she does.
Wow.
After scholarships. Wow. Yep.
Bailey and Anna, if you're listening, Daddy wants a bass boat.
Yeah, give us the specs on that bad boy. And I'm going to have to post those pictures on our social media if you don't mind, because that thing looks nice as hell.
Yeah, I'll get you some better pictures tomorrow when I bring it home out in the sunlight and stuff. But yeah, was planning on getting a boat through Bass Pro, and I kind of drug my feet on the boat because I was wanting to see what else was out there. And I had contacted Brownies, and then they got back with me, and they had a couple boats that I was interested in, and I went in and they showed me the ones they talked about. He goes, and we have this boat that this older gentleman brought in recently, and it was perfect. It's a Ranger Z185, and he had it custom ordered, and it's got all the electronics you can think of. It's got a custom color on it. It's got anything and everything that I could dream of having. It's a used one, but it's only got 35 hours on the motor.
What year is it?
It's a 2020.
So barely used.
Barely used. It
Awesome.
looks brand new. It looks brand new.
Yeah, in those pictures, I would have never guessed that it was 5 years old, ever.
We need to drag it out here. We got lots of lakes to show you.
Yeah, I know. I was, as soon as I got it all ready to go and stuff and got my different permits for all the different state parks and stuff this year, you guys were going to be my first call. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think I've fished a little bit in Missouri in the creeks and stuff, but not actually getting on a lake and doing some pretty good fishing.
Well, we'll back this up here real quick, but we will say first, like Lake Monroe, it's close to where you live in Indiana. That's the largest lake in Indiana. It's about 11,000 acres. Nobody would get excited about that in Missouri. I don't know if 11,000 acres cracks the top 10 in this state.
Oh, wow.
But we'll get to fishing holes in a little bit. Let's back this up, kind of explain what we were talking about to kick this thing off. So my father and your father were best friends growing up. I always liked hearing how your father and my mother would squabble, which is easy to do.
Yes.
But it sounds like Big Larry used to give it back to her. And I think that's pretty cool. And your dad was a very outgoing, gregarious kind of guy. And my dad is the exact opposite. And always fun to be around those two when they were together.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, we, lost your father a few years back, but he left a pretty cool legacy and 4 sons, like 4 boys, all really cool guys, all different, which was always fun too, to know all 4 of you. And I kind of fall right in the middle. Like, to begin with, of the 4, you were the dick when we were younger. And
I haven't changed.
But we turned out the closest. So that's pretty cool too. So Shane, the oldest, Eric next, followed by Larry, named after the father, and then Adam. And we'll tell a funny story about breaking Adam's fingers later into the podcast. But we grew up in Northwest Indiana. Our parents went to East Gary when Gary became what it is today, or was on the slide into the economic and socially devastated city that it is today. East Gary actually changed its name to be disassociated to Lake Station. So the town that our dads and my mom, and was your mom from there too?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Your mom too, technically graduated from, no longer exists as a new name.
Right.
Station. But you guys picked up and moved quick down to Martinsville, real close to Bloomington, Indiana. And we did get to come down and visit you guys sometimes and go camping and stuff like that. So it was always fun to get down to Southern Indiana when we were young and see those beautiful hills and everything. So yeah, friendship was kind of forced upon us. You made it hard for a while.
Yeah, it was a big culture shock going from, up in Northwest Indiana, Gary, Indiana, down to Martinsville. Very rural, lots of farmland. So it was some getting used to for the first few years. But I mean, it's beautiful. My mother still lives there, still lives in the same house they built. And my oldest brother lives about a mile down the road, and she loves it out there.
Now, I remember the first time we came to the new house, you had just killed a buck on the backside of the property. So you were always the brother that definitely hunted and fished more than the rest.
Yes.
And I want to talk, we've had Paddle Down on a bunch. We've talked some Southern Indiana, but we haven't had a lot of Indiana coverage on the podcast. Just kind of get into what the outdoors is like there in that Martinsville area. Because I don't think people realize, especially Northern Indiana people, they don't realize how much public land there is and all those state forests and the national forest and all the opportunities the southern half of the state has that the northern half doesn't.
Well, you figure Morgan Monroe State Forestry is, it's right on my mom. It's right on her back door, basically, 10-minute drive from her house and you're in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't tell you like how big the forestry there is, but it's a significant amount of acreage, where I can go
between 30 and 40,000 acres.
Is it really?
That's state forest. Yeah.
Wow. That's more than what I thought it was. And you've got pretty much, your basic, hunting. You have, your whitetail, you have, your different birds, you have turkey. Turkey has basically blown up in Morgan County. From now, until, back in the day in the late 80s when we moved there, you rarely ever saw a turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely. And now you can go and look out my mom's kitchen window and you can see them every morning. They're out there all the time now. And that's one thing that I didn't get to do a whole lot was turkey hunting, just because when I did do a lot of hunting there, they just weren't around. I'm not really sure what happened with that as far as the big blow up. But they're everywhere there now. And it's nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty easy to explain. There was a remnant population of turkeys in Southern Indiana, just like there was in the Ozarks of Missouri. The first time I ever heard a turkey gobble, I had met a guy at Purdue. I have no idea who he was at this time in life, but somebody that took me turkey hunting for the first time down by Turkey Run, down by Shade State Park and in that Crawfordsville area. And at that time, there were no turkeys at all in Northern Indiana. You had to get about to that point for them to start and then get further south down in and around Bloomington, the Morgan Monroe, into the Hoosier National Forest. But when the restoration started happening across much of the country, especially in the Midwest, Indiana, like Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, so many others started actually just transplanting turkeys. Some of them were actually captured in the Ozarks of Missouri that led to the restoration efforts in Northern Indiana. So those turkeys started spreading north, but they also started spreading south. And then you had this real steep population spike. It's kind of like that old thing my dad used to always say when I was a kid, like, would you go to work for me if I doubled your pay every day for 30 days, but we started on day one with a penny? And most people are like, no way, I'm not working for a penny. But, the doubling becomes so large at the end of that scale that you would be a multimillionaire. And it was the same kind of like evolution of this quick reintroduction of turkeys. And we've seen the same thing with deer and other species. So, it starts spreading, and then the explosion gets bigger, and then the doubling and the doubling. And then the predators figure out that all this food is back on the landscape. The hunters return. So that, that big spike has occurred. And now we're kind of on a downhill trajectory on turkey populations, which we're really hopeful will stable out into kind of what the habitat and each of those different ecological areas is willing to sustain over time. Everybody's like, well, that's bullshit, because it was just in the 90s and the early 2000s when it was, turkeys were everywhere. And like you said, they still are in your mom's yard, but people have such a short attention span that, okay, you're talking about a couple of decades in the evolution of a species that's going to be here for hopefully millenniums. So it's a small amount of time.
What I found interesting was when we first moved down there to where my mom is now, my oldest brother, Shane, and I were out doing some rabbit hunting across the street. And he was our old bus driver and he was a dairy farmer. And when we were rabbit hunting, we jumped up some quail. Well, we shot one and we were we were all excited about it because we didn't know that quail were in that area. And as we were walking up, there was a gentleman from Quail Unlimited that was up talking to the hunter. And he's like, "Hey, what'd you guys get?" And I said, "Man, I got a quail." And he said, "Oh, we just put those out there a couple weeks ago." Like, he's like, "Well, you owe me this amount of money," and started laughing. And I thought it was interesting because they built these different, for rabbits and quail, um, basically starting out their little homes so that they can attract them. And they put sunflower fields out there and a couple different things. And we were unaware of that. But I thought it was interesting that they chose this, dairy farmer's land to start doing that. And now there's quail out there. They're everywhere.
Yeah,
Really?
my parents have a covey of probably about 30 to 40 in their yard that live in the blackberry bushes and will come out and be pecking out in the yard and stuff. It's so
Wow.
cool to watch some little birds kind of just dance around out in the yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, the quail have definitely taken a hit. I'm excited tomorrow night. I'm going to Pheasant Fest in Kansas City. It was invited by Jordan Martintich, who's been on the podcast, to the Bob White Ball. So it's a suit and tie. It's a gala for the quail, kicking off Pheasant Fest out in Kansas City. So pretty excited to be all hoity-toity and at an auction where I can't afford a single thing.
You're fancy.
Fancy. I'm fake fancy. I'm like,
Fancy like Applebee's.
I'm in the room. Yeah, there you go. That's about right. If they have any like two can dine for 40 meals on the silent auction, there might be something I can afford.
That's
But,
pushing it $40 for two people. That's
dude, my kid, yeah, with these girls' college bills for sure. For sure. Well, let's talk about where you're going to use this boat, man. Like, I thought after you started sharing those pictures, I was like, we should just get them on the podcast and talk about fishing. We haven't talked about fishing in Indiana nearly as much. So I want to hear what you're thinking and then share with you some ideas on where you can take it in your state, as well as, where you can drag it out here and take me and Shags fishing.
Most importantly.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where I do a lot of my fishing has been Geist. Geist has some great fishing.
Now you're fancy.
Well, the bad part about Geist is getting from where I live up there, because it's a nightmare getting up there. And then the fact that they have doubled their ramp fees, because before they didn't really have ramp fees. And then the residents decided that, hey, I think we should start charging that. I want to say it's like $40 just to launch your boat there, which is kind of crazy. But probably not going to go there as much. I'm probably going to do like Lake Lemon, Morse, Raccoon, occasionally Monroe. But Monroe is just so choppy, especially on the weekends. But what's good about my schedule is I'll be able to get off work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I can go straight to the lake, and I'm there in, 25, 30 minutes. And that's during the week. So there's not a lot of boaters out there during the week, but that's very attractive to me. So that's the good thing about me is being a firefighter. I can get off early, and then the next 2 days I've got off. So basically where I'll do all my fishing is going to be during the week, not much on the weekends.
Yeah, we failed to mention that you're a real American hero. You are a firefighter, which is pretty cool. That's a lineage from your father. Your father was not only a firefighter, but he was a PhD professor of fire. I don't know exactly what you call that, but I mean, he was the guy at Ivy Tech that ran the fire program.
He started it.
And his two oldest sons are both firefighters. So that's a pretty cool lineage. Now, I believe he had a heck of a collection of fire trucks, all that fire memorabilia. Where's all that at today?
It's still in my mom's basement. She was very shocked to see what he had down there because she never went down there.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would always get 7 to 10 packages a day there toward the final years of him being with us. And when my mom went, my brother and I knew what he had down there. But when my mom went down there after my dad passed, she was not very happy. because I want to say he probably had $250,000 worth of fire toys down in the basement. Yeah. So, and it could have been even more. So she's actually selling them here and there on eBay. She's probably sold maybe, I don't know, 75 to 100 of his toys, but that doesn't make a dent. Which I can share some of those pictures with you guys. It's crazy on how much stuff he had down there.
Well, I remember my dad talking about it. And didn't he have a fire truck like in the barn, like an actual fire truck?
Two
fire trucks. Yeah.
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 And then Ivy Tech.
She should do an auction. If that's the direction she wants to go, like that would be like a kind of auction that would garner national attention from fire enthusiasts all over.
Yeah. And actually he got Ivy Tech's first fire truck that I believe that he got for Ivy Tech. They actually gave it to him whenever he retired from Ivy Tech. So that one is actually still sitting in my mom's driveway. But the other,
some people get a watch, some people get fire trucks. You just never know.
Yeah, my mom donated one or two of them to the National Historical Society. One of them he was redoing, taking it apart, having all the parts sandblasted. He had them sandblasted and then got them all painted up and never got it put back together. But she ended up donating that to the Historical Society.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Good for her. How's your mom?
She's doing really good. She has been married for 2 years now.
Okay.
So they stay at her house a week and they stay at his house a week. He lives in Martinsville as well. So he's local. He was a widow. My mom was a widow. So they found some things in common and they've been together for a little while now. My dad's been gone for 9 years now. Doesn't seem like 9 years, but.
No, it goes quick, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, talking about retirement for a fireman, you're getting up there. Aren't you staring down retirement?
I can retire in 4 years. When I turn 52, I can retire.
God, that's gotta be
kids.
Nice.
Listen, kids, this is a serious.
I'm gonna be 100 still working.
Yeah. Like, man, I had this conversation the other day with somebody, but there are some jobs out there that you might not make a ton of money while you're doing it, but the benefits are lifelong. And I mean, not that you haven't made good money, you've made good money, but like you can retire at 52 and you're going to be using that boat a lot. Like you're pretty much set for life. Now your job is very dangerous. I mean, you literally are putting your life on the line when you go to work, and it's very appreciated. But at the same time, there are nights where you're just hanging out playing pool. Nothing bad happens. Those are probably rare, but they do occur. And then you're 24 on, 48 off?
Yes.
So like if you love to hunt and fish and you're not afraid of a challenge or putting your life on a line once in a while, like it's a hell of a gig, man. It's a hell of a gig.
It is. And I mean, we run out of one station. I want to say last year we did 3,400 runs a year. So we are busy. Like we covered the whole city with one station. And we're surrounded by volunteer departments as well. So we are first in a lot of their fires, their bad car wrecks. So not only do we just cover our area, but we cover, I want to say 4 or 5 volunteer departments that surround us. So we stay pretty busy, and the nearest full-time department is 25 minutes away. So
you just said something that I've always kind of wondered. I don't know the reason why. Why are fire trucks always deployed to car accidents?
Well, normally on a PD only, which is property damage only, we don't go on. But if you have someone that's trapped in there, we've got all the tools on our rescue truck that we can cut them out, stabilize the truck. We've got airbags. We have struts if the car's outside, we can stabilize the vehicle, because then you have a fuel spill, oil spills, antifreeze. So we carry all that stuff.
So I get the part that, there could be a fire, like if gasoline's leaking out and so on and so forth. But again, like, how did it, do you know the history? Too bad your dad's not around. We'd ask him. He would know the, for sure, like the history of this. Like, how did it become the fire department that carries around the jaws of life or the saws to get people out? Why? Like, it just seems like it would be, it would be counterintuitive to send the fire department out. I'm especially thinking kind of back in the day to a car accident where someone's trapped in a car and then, you know, a fire starts on the other side of town. Now your resources are being used on a car accident and not available for the fire. Like, it just seems strange that it fell to the fire department and somewhere along the lines, like the police didn't have another division that, you know, serviced bad car accidents, or there wasn't like an emergency response service that isn't the police, isn't the fire department, but exists only for that. Like, kind of like the EMTs, but with a actual, you know, construction crew or whatever.
Well, we have to be EMTs as well. So, I mean, it's no different than us going on someone that stubbed their toe, which we do go on those calls, you know, and we have firefighters there. It's kind of a non-emergency call but people call 911 for that. We could have a car wreck or a fire on the other side of town. I'll use fire. So now I've got a not so emergency call with a toe stub where I've got firefighters, and then now I've got who's going to take care of this house fire over here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of throw that around as far as using resources over here, and then you get another call. But that's why we have, you know, 8 guys per shift. We have to where if we had a house fire or a bad car wreck where we needed to have extra manpower, we can do a general tow, which goes out to everybody's pager or their phone, and it allows them to come to the station to cover the station. That way, if we do get another emergency, there are still fire trucks there. And then we can send those resources if we get back to back to back calls. And it's no different than, you know, having a tornado come through, or, you know, the flood of '08 that we had, to where you are spread out, but you're able to cover those emergencies with the manpower that you have.
Well, yeah, our neighbors caught their yard on fire. Like, it started encroaching on our yard. We heard all these sirens. It was just a couple days ago. And Savannah looked out the window and she's like, "Oh my God, they're pulling into our neighbors." And then I looked out our side window and I go, "Oh yeah, their whole backyard's on fire and it's coming right towards us." But I mean, they did such a great job. They were out there with rakes and they sprayed a little bit, but didn't have to get to a fire hydrant or anything like that. It was just that our neighbors were burning when they shouldn't have been burning. Some high winds, and it goes up so quickly that it can get out of control real fast.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, the stuff that we respond on, they're all either medical emergencies, fire emergencies, rescue emergencies. So I think that that's just something that has been lumped together. You know, hazmat spills, confined space problems. You know, when you have construction crews where they're inside of a hole and then there's a collapse on it. So that's just something that they decided many a decade ago that the fire department will respond on those incidents.
Well, we sure appreciate you, man, and all your firefighting brothers and sisters out there that keep us safe. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, let's get back to talking about some fishing. Now, you mentioned a couple of places, Lake Lemon, just north of Bloomington. That's a favorite. That's a great lake. There's a guy that we should have on the podcast someday. I could introduce you to, and I believe he's a fireman. You might know him, Nick Teeters. Do you know Captain Nick?
Nope.
I want to say he's a fireman in some capacity, but he used to guide on Lake Lemon, took me out a few times. We did pretty well. He's a heck of a dude, big sportsman. They're out of the Bloomington area, and I'm sure you two would, you know, hit it off and have a lot in common. So that'd be a guy that could help you get started on Lake Lemon. Monroe, one of the nice things about Monroe is about half of it is no way. So you've got the entire east half of the lake, you know, from the Causeway Bridge there at Paintown, that you don't have to worry about that chop, because he's telling the truth, Shags. Like, the way we talk about Lake of the Ozarks, you know, it suffers the same fate in the summer months when, guys are ripping those giant boats on probably about 6,000 acres. At least at Lake of the Ozark, they're doing it over 30,000 acres. And there's a lot more on Lake of the Ozark because for a lot of Lake Monroe, it's a core lake. So it's more like Truman or one of the others where there's no houses around the shore. There's very, very few. John Mellencamp got a pass somehow. He sits up on a bluff
I
looking out.
wonder.
Yeah.
I wonder
Looking
how he
out,
got one.
looking out over the lake from his lakeside castle, which is, I think that's a great testament to how beautiful this area is, though. Um, Billy Joel gave John Mellencamp's induction to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he raved about how beautiful it is there. And they tease Mellencamp. I think he does spend a lot of time in New York and LA, but at the same time, that's his home base. He once said, "I can afford to live anywhere in the world, and there's nowhere I'd rather live than Bloomington, Indiana, and right there on the shores of Lake Monroe."
Well,
So
he goes to all the basketball games. He has season tickets, and you will see him at every home basketball game. He is always there.
So that's a great lake. So don't look past the fact that you don't have to fight boat traffic on that east end, and there's a lot of good fishing on that east end, especially for wipers. I should look into that wiper bite on the east side of the lake. Walleye too, man. I just ran a stocking report on Monroe. I wrote about it for Game and Fish magazine, and I also reported on Geist for Game and Fish magazine recently. But Monroe has been pumping walleye. I mean,
Wow.
millions and millions of walleye fry. Anybody that's interested can go on the DNR's website, look up the stocking data, and there are millions of walleye being stocked into Lake Monroe. So maybe you can get on a walleye bite.
Well, Lemon is probably the closest lake to me. So Lemon will probably be the lake that I fish the most with this boat.
Another
You
lake
have
I love. Oh, go
do
ahead,
you have
Shane.
no, just do you have one in mind? Like you're gonna get the boat. So what are you gonna pop the cherry on? What's the one lake where's the first one? Where are you going first?
I'm thinking Lemon or Geist. I think because Geist, I've fished it so much. I know a lot of the hot spots. I know what I'm doing on Geist. Lemon, I've only been on a couple times over the past 25 years. But like the guy that you talked about, Nick, I mean, he might be a great guy to get a hold of and maybe show me around a little bit. Maybe that's something we could possibly do. Maybe me take him and then him take me, or, if that's something he might be interested in, because I would really like to know more about Lemon because they're so close.
And I totally meant like you two would hook up and go fishing as friends, and I'm
Oh,
sure he'd be
definitely.
down for that. But for the guys that, are listening to this, you're going to spend all this money on a boat, tens of thousands of dollars on a boat, but you don't want to spend $400 to hire a guide for a day to break the lake down for you. So like you're investing in equipment, you're investing in all this. Don't look at hiring a guide like you're investing in a day of somebody else, like, doing it all for you. You're investing in knowledge. Like, now you've got everything. You spend a day out, even have that guide go with you in your new boat, have him show you how he would use the grab, have him show you how he positions a boat to attack a point of interest, So hiring a guide on any given water is like getting an advanced degree on that water. So
Definitely.
And yeah, and mostly those guides too will work with you. Like they're there to help beginners, but in my experience, they actually enjoy it when you got some people in there that kind of know what they're doing and be like, "Hey, man, I don't need a lot of help. I want to pick your brain. Let's fish together." And sometimes they light up a little bit. Like, "Are you serious?" It's like, "Yeah, dude. Let's go out together, and I want to just kind of learn a little bit." And they sure like it.
yeah. Another lake in that area where you're not going to be able to rip that big fancy motor, but you can get your boat on there and trolling motor around is in Yellowwood. So that's only about 100-acre lake. But if you're interested in catching some bluegill, I just love that lake. I love the little campground there at Yellowwood. It's very much like a wilderness area, and getting down there when the crappie and the bluegill are starting to bite in May and looking for mushrooms in the forest. It's a great, double reason to be down there.
Some
Done
of the,
anything on
some of the best
Yellowwood?
bluegill I've
Yeah.
ever seen and caught have been from Yellowwood. Yes.
Yeah, it's a great lake, great lake. And then going over to the Green Sullivan and spending some time on the bigger strip hits. Like you can get your boat on Airline. There's a number of those strip hits over there that are worth going to. Man, I'm getting excited. I want to go back to Indiana and go fishing. And then the namesake of this podcast, Driftwood, comes from the Driftwood River that runs real close to your house. But there's also the Driftwood Fish and Wildlife area. And there's some small lakes in there, and they got muskie. So right there by, where the outlet mall is there in Edinburgh.
Yep.
There's some musky water that very few people know about, like right in there. So that's not far from your house at all.
Is that on the west side of 31? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. Right
Yep,
there.
those-
65 and 31.
Yeah. Isn't there? There's a military base in there too, isn't there?
Yeah. There's Crane, which is south.
It's not Crane.
Um,
Atterbury? Where's
Atterbury.
Atterbury?
Atterbury, yes. It's actually right there off of 31.
That's
Take 252.
In that area, there's some musky waters.
No
I won't
kid.
doubt- I'm not going to drop anybody a pen, but it doesn't take much research online to find them. So you got all kinds of options, dude. I mean, going back up home and fishing on a calm day in East Chicago on Lake Michigan for those giant smallmouth, like that's a huge smallmouth fishery now. Ever since the water quality has changed and those gobies have come in to the harbors, guys get bass boats out there all the time. I went out with Austin Aducci in a bass boat right out of Washington Harbor. So you could drag the boat up home, spend a day on Lake Michigan, catch, and you got a real shot at 5-pound smallmouth doing that.
Well, Larry lives in Ann Arbor, so I could just head up there to him for the weekend and then just go fishing and then visit him and kind of knock two birds out with, one stone.
Yeah. I mean, Ann Arbor and East Chicago are 4 or 5 hours apart.
Right. But
I'm trying to follow.
Lake Michigan is right there. I mean, so I'm talking about going a whole weekend and,
How's Larry? He's still principal at a school up there?
Yeah. So they moved from St. Joe, Michigan. His wife was where'd she work for? Whirlpool, and Whirlpool headquarters is right there.
Mm-hmm.
So then she became a higher up executive at Lazy Boy. And so that's the Lazy Boy headquarters is in Ann Arbor. So he lives roughly a mile or two from the big house, Michigan's stadium.
Yeah.
He's doing real good. I think he is an assistant principal at a Catholic school now, and he took a year off, and now he's back in the game.
I bet they got some comfortable chairs in that house.
All these trophy husbands I know these days, man.
I don't even know why he works. Like,
Yeah.
he has no reason where he would need to work at all.
Yeah.
Lives on a golf course, gated. I mean, he's got everything set up. He just stay-at-home dad and takes care of the kids. Mama works.
That's
Man,
cool.
we hit up some Top Golf when I was back home, and just the bug. I want to get out there and start golfing again so bad. Like
Are you going to join a course? Are you going to get a membership somewhere this year?
Man, I was thinking about it. I really was, but with the wedding in the fall, I don't know if the $900 to $1,500 is smart to spend on a membership in Columbia. Because that was ideally, I was going to talk to you too, Eric, because we're Crohn's brothers. I was going to ask you how your health is doing. But the part of my fitness plan was to get one at LA Nickel in Lake of the Woods and just walk it. Don't get a cart and just get the exercise while I'm out there playing golf in the late spring, early summer. So we'll see. I really want one, but then the responsible part of me is like, we probably should wait until after the wedding, but who knows? I want to play so bad. I might just splurge and do it.
Is that a year? Is that a year membership?
Yeah.
That's not bad. I mean, is it
That's real cheap.
That
Really
No,
is.
it is. It is. Just without a cart, $900. You get 2 courses. So I was just gonna buy a fancy pull or push and just go out there and get my steps in. But I mean, I've been hitting the gym every single day and
Good.
down a bunch of LBs.
Good.
Starting to see a little definition back in the arms again. My gear review will be a kettlebell because I'm all into the kettlebell workouts. But I mean, eating right and supplementing like vitamins and minerals and stuff like that, adding some salts into my diets and some minerals. And I've seen this year is the healthiest I've felt in a very long time when it comes to my guts and really focusing on the gut biome and just eating properly, and been seeing a lot of success. How you been feeling?
Pretty good. I'm still on my every 6 to 8 week infusions, and really, knock on wood, I've been doing really good. Haven't had any issues since I had my last surgery in 2017, and it's been pretty good.
Because I remember at deer camp, we both had a couple of flare ups and attacks where neither one of us was feeling very good at down there, but that
Yeah.
could have had a lot to do with what we were drinking and eating too.
Yes. Possibly. We didn't eat the most healthiest when we had deer camp.
No, not at all.
Speaking of deer camp, I had to put some photos together for the video they made for the Hall of Fame induction, and that was the first time I've seen in a long time that video of all of us standing on the porch wearing the orange deer camp shirts that Bailey made for us. So
Yep.
yeah, man, I'm glad you were there for the last one. I thought it was super cool that uh, I thought it was super cool that the cabin kind of helped bring our friendship to another level as well with you coming out there. And unfortunately, you got the skunk. We never got you a deer, and you almost got shot.
Well,
But
I had some, I mean, I had a chance. I think if I would have taken that, that deer, I think that would have kept, from what happening with,
that's right. It's your fault.
well, no, I'm talking about the shooting at me. I
Yeah.
think that deer would have already been down.
Everything
So
kind of spiraled after that,
it
though.
did.
So it
It
was
did.
like that was the first. That was when we cracked open the door of not getting along with a certain segment. I would love for you to tell that version of the story. I mean, I think we've told it before, but give people, the firsthand account, because you were on briefly on the Up in Smoke podcast, right? Were you on that? No, you weren't on that. You didn't. You weren't at the cleanup, were you?
No, I was not. I wasn't able to get off for that.
But this is the very first time that you've been on the podcast.
Um, I mean, I've been on 2 or 3 other ones that we did during deer camp, but as far
During
as
deer. Okay.
I feel like we've done them at deer camp
I was
before.
gonna say, so
Every
I feel
year.
like you have told that story before,
I have,
but it's been a long time.
it's been
So
a few years.
I want to hear it again. Just
yeah,
tell it again.
we've picked up some new listeners. So talk about your experience hunting down in Shannon County.
Your introduction to the Ozarks.
That's right. That was that the first year?
First
that
time
when
you were there, yeah.
Well, no, is that whenever we didn't have, there was no drywall inside the cabin unit, or was that?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah. I think it was the first where, no heat or anything. Like you
Yeah, it was
slept
a
in
little
your
chill.
hunting gear and yeah.
We basically slept and then woke up and we already had our gear on and everything. And then it was
So cold.
It was so
It was cold in there. Hal Herring lives in Augusta, Montana, like on the Rocky Mountain front. And he says the coldest he's ever been in his life was in that cabin. He had his dog in the bottom of his sleeping bag to try to keep heat inside the sleeping bag to stay alive, he says.
That's funny. Okay, so I don't even remember what year it was, but I was hunting the infamous field on an evening hunt, and had some good video of I want to say a little 6-pointer that came in, and I watched him for probably 10, 15 minutes, and you could hear this screaming truck coming down the county road. And I kind of had a feeling who it was because we had been hearing him all weekend. And all of a sudden, the deer was still there in the middle of the field. And all of a sudden you hear the truck stopped. So the truck's sitting on the county road. You can hear I could barely see around the corner where I was sitting in a double blind that was in a tree, maybe 10 feet up right next to a creek. And you can hear some doors close, and you could tell the deer got a little spooked, kind of took off a little bit, maybe 75 to 100 yards from the truck. And the two gentlemen shot at the deer, and the deer was probably 100 yards in front of me. So I had a front row of all this action. And the deer got hit, ran a little bit, and then bedded down in some tall grass. So then the two guys got in the truck, drove it into the middle of the field, looking for the deer. Well, the deer hopped up and made a beeline right for me.
And didn't they leave and go switch vehicles?
No, not
Okay.
yet. They didn't switch them until once the deer crossed the creek, and they had already shot at him like 3 times.
All right. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. So right next to me, roughly, I don't know, 5-10 yards, there is a deer trail that goes across the creek and then back into the field and woods behind. So this deer's making a beeline for me, and I kind of sit on the edge of the blind because I think something's about to happen. And so the deer stops right next to me right before it crosses the creek. And the deer's looking back at 2 guys. So one of the guys, all of a sudden I see this guy just lay his gun up like that. And I wish there was a camera because my eyes probably went like that. I mean, I've got orange hat. I've got an orange vest on. Like, you cannot, yes, I'm over here. You cannot miss me. So the guy's gun goes up, and right as he fires, I stand up, but it was too late, obviously. And he hit the deer again. So the deer goes across the creek, back up into back in the woods, and I actually see the deer bed down. So then the 2 guys walk over to me and were upset with me because I was in a deer stand that I was allowed to be in, and I was in a field that I was allowed to hunt. So one of the guys approached me and said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm hunting." And I didn't want to really be a smart ass because I'm from Indiana. 2, we are in the backwoods of Shannon County, Missouri, and probably not the safest thing for me to start something with some of those guys in that area. So I said, "I'm hunting this field." And he goes, "Are you with the guy up on the hill?" And I said, "Yeah." And he looked at me and he goes, "Don't you know that you're supposed to put a hunting vest on the duck blind over there?" And I'm looking all over for a duck blind. And I said, "Where?" "That broken down one over there that's in the woods." And I'm like, I had no idea. There wasn't a note. This is what I'm thinking. There wasn't a note. There wasn't a sign. And he goes, "Anytime that you're hunting this field, if you put a yellow vest at the opening of the field, we know that somebody's hunting there." And I said, "I didn't know that." So they got back in their vehicle. They took off. I don't know how long they were gone. They came back. They went over there, shot the deer again, got the deer, put it in the back of their truck, and they were gone. So I was done hunting, obviously, because that was a lot. And went back up to the cabin, and I was one of you guys and like, "Hey, did you get one?" I'm like, "No, but somebody else did." So I told the story and made sure that Brandon and Shags knew that they needed to put a hunting vest at the beginning of that field or they were going to get shot at. So that was one of the craziest situations I have ever been in. But after all these years, I'm not surprised by the situation that I was in.
Literally the deer was standing that bullet was mere feet from you.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know where the stand, where the trail is.
I understand.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, that's them shooting 50 to 75 yards, like right at
So just to put this into a little more context, like I own the very front part of this field. So you would pull off the road and into a little opening. You had to cross over my land to get to the back of the field, which was public land owned by the Pioneer Forest. So, I mean, technically, one, they shot the deer from the road out of their vehicle. They drove across, my field. It had run onto my property, after they wounded it. They drove at it with a vehicle, spooked it again. It runs across the field, stops by Eric. They again shoot from their vehicle, still don't kill it, almost shoot Eric. And then it's our fault because we didn't signal to them that they shouldn't shoot from the road to poach right now because somebody else is in the field hunting.
Correct.
So the same crew, they drive around through the Pioneer Forest in their vehicle. They kill as many, they act like they're Robin Hood. They kill as many deer as they can kill, and they claim that they're feeding the needy with it. Well, we have a program for that in Missouri, and that's not what they're doing. Almost all of these deer are just shot for sport. They're kicked over a hill. I know where they're dumped. It's just insanity down there. And that's the law of the land. So after that happened, that guy started talking a bunch of shit. I went up to his grandfather's place, and the minute I got there, that guy came out just on fire. You don't belong down here. Don't come down here trying to change our ways. You don't do this and you don't do that. And I was like, hey man, like I'm just here, peacefully trying to solve this problem. And eventually that dude came around. The grandpa, he ended up being a pretty decent fella, nice guy. And I always tried to smooth things over with these people, but that mullet head just went around talking shit and, stirring the pot. And it all came from they hated the fact that we were hunting those woods. They hated the fact that one of their main thoroughfares for driving through the forest had been cut off by people that are actually hunting the way that you should be hunting, out of tree stands and ground blinds. They're releasing their dogs, running their dogs literally down my driveway. They're letting them out at the end of my driveway. They're almost killing my friends. They're shooting deer out of my field. And then they come and they poach, 3 hours after dark on opening weekend. And that's when they cross the line that I had drawn in the sand. And that's when we turned them in for this. And that's when they burned my house to the ground. So it all started with Eric nearly getting killed.
It's all Eric's fault on why we don't have that cabin anymore.
Man, I feel like I'm a horrible friend.
I told a bit of that story for your Hall of Fame induction.
Okay.
They had asked the question of what's something that you'd want people to know about him, and I was like, he talks the talk. What's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. And he lost a dream cabin over it because he refused to let people poach. And yeah, that story came up.
Well, thanks, man. So for people that don't know, by the time this comes out, I will have already been inducted, but I'm being honored with an induction in the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. And Shags was gracious enough to be part of the induction video. So he's telling me what I'm about to see this coming week because it hasn't happened yet.
If it makes the cut, I don't know what they're going to cut in, but I definitely told that story.
Thank you. No, dude, it's crazy. Eric, you've been on the fringes out in Indiana. Shags has been in the trenches with me more than anybody. What that set off the few years after that all happened. But I've said it a million times, dude, I wouldn't change anything, to have the life that I have today. So thank you for starting all that shit that set me on this course to this new and better way. I appreciate you. I appreciate you almost taking a bullet for me, buddy.
The bad thing about that was the next several years that we had deer camp, it was just didn't seem right because you knew that one, the dogs were going to be going all week and you had to deal with that. But it was just knowing that they could be walking through the woods right next to your barn, which I think you may have had that problem at one point, whether they were on an ATV or a vehicle.
A Jeep. They're in a Jeep.
Yeah.
Drove under my tree stand in the forest. I walked about 3 miles. So from my literally uphill the whole way. Not sound like a grandpa, but you left the cabin and you'd go a mile and a half back into the forest. And I would walk it because I'd like to still hunt my way home. And there I sit, having sweated my ass off to walk uphill a mile to the top of the mountain to hunt. And, here they come in their Jeep, just blasting anything that moves, from the trail, just driving around with guns blazing out of both sides of the door. And
Well,
and
and
then
that
nothing happens to them. That's the bullshit of it all. Is this has happened in 2016 and the 30, 40 years before that, it's happened every year since. Now, they did bring the Blackhawks in and crack down a couple of years ago. That got the Round Spring Ranger Station burned down and a few other retaliatory things, but it's just insanity, man. And that's kind of how I want you to wrap it up. I mean, talk about the fact that you came from Indiana, you bought an out-of-state license for hundreds of dollars. You ate in restaurants there, Echo Bluff and other places. You bought supplies there. I mean, you were coming to this place, like, one, what did you think of it? How it looked beautiful and all that, and then two, like, how shitty was the experience because of what you had to go through?
Yeah, everything was great up until you enter that county or that area. Like, some of the most beautiful land scenery that I've ever seen. Um, the rivers, the current river, the creeks, just the atmosphere minus those people is some of the best experiences that I've had in any other state. And I hate that a group of people have changed how I feel about that area now. And it's, will I ever hunt there again or go around there? Probably not. I mean, I know there's a wedding kind of near that area later this fall. But when this first started with your cabin and stuff, I was looking at that the next 20 plus years where I was going to have, the stories and the relationships and the stuff that we do as friends and a group. Are you guys there?
yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
we're still here.
and I hate that group of people have changed my thought process and my outlook on that area. It doesn't change the fact that I had some great times with great friends. I met some phenomenal people going there. We had some great food, great memories. But I just hate that a small group of people have tainted that experience, unfortunately.
That's really the key that we should emphasize too. It's a very small group because there's
Small group.
people on that road that got invited to the wedding because we made lifelong friends. It's just unfortunately it's a family or two that are just garbage.
Yes.
And a couple more of those, Facebook dirtbags like to try to promote that I hate all of Southern Missouri and I talk shit about Southern Missouri. I don't know anybody in the state of Missouri that's promoted that area more than I've promoted it. And I think that's what they really hate. I think they really hate the fact that I love it and they know it. And I love those people and they know that too. And that I try to give a voice to the people that have been, put into a corner like Eric. They just happen to live there and they can't speak up and they can't hunt the way that they want to hunt or do the things that they want to do out of the same fears. If you buck against the machine, you're going to get burned out or you're going to, and there's no one to protect you. Like, that's the problem.
Have you been in contact with the gentleman that bought the property? Yours?
One time I talked to him. He seems like a really nice guy. He asked me about some of the underground piping, invited us to stop by anytime we wanted to stop by. It's going to be a retirement place for him. He doesn't live there full time. He is related to one of the families that, we knew, one of a guy that had always been really nice. And so he has some local protections that I guess we lacked.
So he's okay as far as not being harassed or anything like that? Or
I mean, what he said to me was, everything will be fine as long as they respect me and my property boundaries. I was like,
so nothing, it won't be fine.
yeah.
Wow.
And
Oh,
that's what sucks. It's like everything will be fine as long as you cower to the bullies. You know, that's what it is. It's just, as long as you are not, as long as you don't stand up to the bullies, as long as you just allow yourself to get worked over and run over, you should be fine down there, which is just insane because it is such a beautiful area and it could be so much. And you know, as more time passes, I think about like what Governor Nixon did and how he had the same vision. And, you know, he invested, you know, so much into Echo Bluff so fast to get it done for the same reasons that we're talking about today. Is like he recognized just what an incredible resource Missouri is sitting on and how like maybe if you can show the way and bring in good jobs and bring in, you know, good tourism dollars from people trying to just hike and fish and paddle. Like nobody's, you know, doing anything destructive. Nobody's coming in to do destructive stuff. That's the other, you know, side of it too, is like all these people come from, you know, out of state and destroy our forest. Eric wasn't destroying anything. Like Eric wasn't ripping, you know, through the forest in Jeeps and shit like that. That's happening locally by that small group of people. And you know, they don't want people like Eric to come in there and bring those out of state dollars and expose this area for what it is. And on one hand, economically and such, I understand it. Like, you know, if that happens, then land prices can go up. They can't afford, you know, the land prices at that point. And so in a protection of that, it makes sense. But in you know, in a way of actually, you know, being hurtful and having no regard at all for others or wildlife or conservation or anything, that's that's the part that you just can't abide by.
Yeah. After the fact, I thought when I thought about the situation, when I had time to think about it, I thought, man, the last place that I would want to die is Shannon County, Missouri, from some rednecks that could care less about anything but themselves. And yeah, I'm glad to, I mean, this may sound, I'm just glad it's over with. I know that you dealt with a lot of different things there, more than what I know. I'm glad you're out of that situation. Um, if you were still there, I still think it would just been a matter of time. But
Yeah, dude, I agree. I honestly believe that I was allowed to build that just so it could be taken away, you know, just so I could get put on the path that I was supposed to be on. And it was kind of like the one last lesson that I needed to learn. And, you know, it was a super cool place. And
I
we
miss
got,
it still.
yeah, we got wrapped up in it. And
well,
yeah, I miss it too,
you're
man.
welcome for that. How about that? You're
Yeah,
welcome
thanks.
for that.
Thanks. That creek was beautiful, man. It was just, it
Oh,
was a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah.
And like you said, it doesn't taint those memories that we made and, you know, the friendships that came from it. Like you and Paddle Don would have never met and, you know, other people like that.
Well, me
So
and Shags, I would have never met
yep.
Shags. And
that's right. That's right. So it was super fun. And I'm glad that you were part of it. It means a lot. And, sorry you almost got killed.
I mean,
Not the first
Almost.
time, right? Not the first.
no, it's not the first time. Hell, I almost died January this year from a house fire. So, I mean, it happens.
Oh man. Well, all right. Well, I can't wait to get in that boat. Can't wait to go fishing. Bring it out here to Missouri. We'll do, you know, we'll do some really cool stuff around here, but I want to get back to Indiana and spend some time too. And even Patoka, getting down to Patoka is a trip we can make.
Well, I've got a friend, he just retired off of my shift. He was there 36 years. He built a cabin or a house, and he's like 10 minutes from Patoka.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like 5 minutes from one of the ramps. I mean, so
Wow.
yeah.
All right. Well, we're kind of wrapping up the podcast here, but we can't let you get out of here without the mystery of bait buckets. I got the bait bucket here. I like to show it off. But actually, our good friend Misty Mountain Michael had mentioned a mystery bait bucket question that his wife had thought of when we were doing the Big Rock Candy Mountain opening Eve podcast that she wanted to know. I thought it was a great question. Renee, shout out. She wanted to know if you could fish with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be? Because originally I said Bill Dance, but now that we've got to interview him and that was really cool, and now I'm no longer fly curious and full blown fly. I mean, I really think going with the Fawns, Henry Winkler on a fly fishing trip would be super cool. So I need to apologize to my childhood hero and Bill Dance that I would pass on fishing with him so I could fish with the Fawns, Henry Winkler. And that was Michael Collins too. So I'm kind of stealing his. I was like, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the like a live theme. Like I just think it makes it more relevant because it gives us a goal, maybe something we can actually do. Um, I don't have my answer yet though. Eric, do you have yours? Now that you got this fancy boat, you can probably get anybody you want to go fishing with.
I doubt that. There's probably going to be a lot of solo fishing trips, just because it'll all be during the week and stuff, and everybody has a normal job, unlike mine. So that is a good question. Do they have to know how to fish?
No, man. No, not at all.
Oh, wow. It would probably be someone that it would probably be my dad, just for the simple fact that he never taught us how to fish. He never taught us how to hunt. He never did any of that stuff. And just to get him out on the boat, out on the water, for 5 or 6 hours, and just to have that conversation and to do something that I've never done before with him, that would actually probably be who I would pick.
That's a good answer.
I'm not even sure if he ever fished in his life. I mean, I don't know if back in the day with you and your dad, if they ever did anything like that, but
I don't think so, man. My dad didn't fish.
I don't think he ever did. So, to have him try to do something, and to watch him be frustrated and pissed off would be, I miss that about about my dad. Cause, yeah, my dad was a one of a kind. Either you loved him or hated him. And, to get him out on the water would be, something special and interesting.
So I just went to the fly fishing show in Denver. It was a trade show. It was great. I wrote about it. Column is up on the Driftwood Outdoors website and available in a bunch of newspapers online as well. So you can just kind of Google the Driftwood Outdoors column about the trade show. Well, what I thought was so cool about it was they had, a bunch of vendors that you could actually buy from. So it was like 30 flies for $20. Laura and I both cleaned up on some flies. They had a lot of the big names, Winston, Sage, all the big names were there, but probably half of it was destinations. I like that a lot. And then they had the fly fishing film tour at the end of the night. So we went to the fly fishing film tour. Shags, I think we could have a winner, man, if we did the blue ribbon slam through Missouri. That would be a
in
great
24 hours. That'd be pretty cool.
It'd be hard, but it'd be fun to try. And the Reverend McLeod came out. He was there, and and we were there early. So we were sitting in the very front row. And so he came out and told a couple of stories. He's in his 90s now. Tom Skidget, I think is his actual name. Tom Skidget. Anyways, the father, and a river runs through it. And it just has kind of reset how much I love that movie. And because of that, I think Brad Pitt would be my answer. Not for the reason that all the women would say Brad
Shadow
Pitt.
casting.
Yeah, I just, I just truly think that dude would probably really be cool to hang out. They say you don't want to meet your heroes, because they're usually going to let you down, and maybe he's a dork, but I don't think so. I think Brad Pitt's probably cool. I'd love to pick his brain about Legends of the Fall, some of the cooler movies that he's been in, but especially A River Runs Through It, and what it was like to film that. like the lasting legacy of it, to be the number one film ever in the genre, I think is pretty cool without any argument. There's no other fishing movie ever made that compares to that. So, and he's a Missouri guy. So maybe we can twist Brad Pitt's arm into going fishing with us. Or when we film Squareheads, maybe he can play a part.
Now that'd be quite the double date of fishing. Me with the Fawns and you with old Fight Club. That'd be pretty exciting.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool. Fight Club, that's a good one too. I'd be like, all right, Brad, the first rule of fishing is we don't talk about fishing.
He's just sitting there, hit me in the ear. All right, guys, the final cast of the pod. Eric, I'll start. Great seeing you, man. I'm so excited to hear that you're going to come out in the fall and get to hang out with you in person again. Super jealous of the boat, and I'll be texting you a lot to try to convince you to bring it out here and let's hit up one of the lakes / reservoirs.
There won't be much twisting. I'll be out there.
Hey, we never told the story about Adam breaking his finger. So the youngest Hoskins brother was a really good basketball player, played in college. I mean, he was a stud basketball player. And I don't know how he got it, but like, me and Eric are about the same height. Larry's a little shorter than us, and Shane's about the same as us too. I mean, we're all kind of right in there. And then Adam's what, like 6'3" or something?
Yeah, he's like 6'2", 6'3".
So he had the height, whatever. So we're up at my old house, and there's a big front yard, like a couple acres of a front yard. And dude, I don't know if you were there or if it was Larry.
It wasn't me.
It must have been Larry. So my brother is pulling Adam on a sled behind the four-wheeler. So we never waited for the snow. We just pulled sleds on grass. And then when the beans came out, the best was the beans would come out, but the corn would still be standing. Farmers are going to love hearing this. We would just do the slingshot into the corn. So you'd get going as fast as you could with the sled behind you. And then you'd make that hard 90 degrees, and then you'd whip the person on the sled like out into the cornfield, mowing down a bunch of roads. Well, we were doing that, and then they were coming through the front yard, and I was up in our bedrooms that looks down on the front yard with a BB gun all pumped up, and they came by, and I just made like a miracle shot. It hit them from like maybe 100 yards moving with a BB. And he rolled off that sled and somehow rolled his fingers up and broke his fingers. And he was like the star basketball player. Man,
was it a shooting hand?
I don't remember. But man, they were pissed. Like, we got in so much trouble for shooting at him out the sled. But it all worked out. He's doing good too, right?
That wasn't the only time that the Hoskins kids got in trouble. I mean, I think there were some Purdue stories too, wasn't there? So
no, it wasn't at Purdue. I mean, we never got in trouble except when I came down to see you guys. So yeah, we won't even get into that. But
yeah, I wouldn't.
Thankfully, Mr. Hoskins knew the sheriff well. The sheriff came over in the morning. We got our own private interrogation. Yeah, by the sheriff. So it all worked out though. So
weren't you guys in the Brown Beaver?
I think we were in my car.
Oh,
we were
okay.
And when we're getting searched and they're pulling like hatchets and bows and like, I'm like, for real, man, I'm a hunter. And they thought we were in like a gang fight with like medieval weaponry. Like, we're going to go get in a fight with two girls.
Like Anchorman.
Well, I won't say it all, but like we were in a group and we were all driving back roads, doing what you do on back roads. And a couple girls got out of a car and started wrestling in the road, and somebody called it in as a fight. So then we all got pulled over and we're like, nobody's fighting. Like, we're doing the opposite. We're trying to love on these girls. Nobody's fighting. And yeah, other things happened and, shit goes down. Small town Indiana, man. Those little pink houses, Jack and Diane, old Mellencamp.
To be young again.
Some good times. Good times.
It was good times. Yep. Shout out to your dad, man. Miss your dad. Wish he was still around.
Yeah.
So.
Gear review coming up next.
All right.
Into the podcast, the beginning of the gear review. Brandon, what are you reviewing for us today?
if you notice this beautiful tan, I just returned from a conference in Orlando, and I will say that I spent about a day working outside by the pool. It was super nice. I had it was productive too. I got to the end of my emails. Um, Wonderful weather, 75 degrees, in and out of the pool, hot tub, all that, only to come home to everything being frozen, ice storm, windy, and all that. But I am more prepared to go back to the sun with my new hat. So I am back to protecting this increasingly bald head of mine and my face from skin cancer. So I used to have one of these hats. It got gone somehow. I don't know. But I got a new one down in Florida on clearance. Got the hook. So can't wait. Can't wait to get on the river, protecting myself from skin cancer.
Well, for my gear review, we were talking about when I say mine and Savannah's health and wellness journey. She actually was my motivation because she's been doing it for quite a bit. And now she's a CrossFitter, gets up and does the 5 a.m. CrossFit class every morning. I mean, she is hardcore, dedicated, and I've been going to the gym every day. And I started doing kettlebell workouts. So then we're like, well, we need to get some kettlebells at the house. And look at this bad boy. It is Ethos. And this one is 35.3 lbs, baby, or 16 kg, and just doing all sorts of different workouts. And man, it makes you sore in places you didn't even know you had muscles. That swinging that thing around is so much different than just a dumbbell. And man, I can't say enough good things about it. It is really kicking my butt, but in a good way. And talking about floating this summer, I'm going to hopefully be sleeveless and just be like jacked on them oars. You see every muscle
I
in
want to
my
see the
arms.
six pack. I want to see the six pack.
That might take a while.
I'll tell you what, Eric, you do remain skunked after, did you come 3 years hunting? Did you hunt 3 years and not get one, or 2?
I think I went 4, didn't I?
Yeah, I thought he was there.
it 4?
I just missed 1 year.
Well, and you were there when all the shit went down with
Yes.
the
He was
poaching.
asleep.
He was asleep. He missed
'Cause
it
I came in late. I came in
Yeah.
late that day. I was just upstairs laying down, and then I heard the gunshot, and I was like, what are they doing out there now?
Well, good things come to those who wait. So if you're willing to come back to Missouri, we will be in North Missouri now, and you will kill a deer, and you'll kill a good one. So it was Uncle Steve's turn last year. Should be your turn this year. So we're gonna make sure all of our Missouri visitors eventually get a deer. Took Uncle Steve 3 years. So
Sounds good. I actually took off the first couple of weeks of November, so I am probably already on the calendar to have that time off. So I will probably have to take you up on that.
it'll be around November 13th or 14th. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but dude, bring the boat. We've got some great lakes around here too. Some really good bass lakes. So we'll have some fun.
Sounds good.
All right. We will see you down the trail.